in that moment, she needed someone to tell her she was safe. And so she did, and her body responded in the same way it would have done if she'd had the inhaler. If we can get to the root of the emotional issues that are causing the body to go into tension or stress or whatever it's doing, that will help reduce the symptoms. Hypnosis is taking somebody or guiding someone into a deep state of relaxation, which is what we call trance. When children have a bad influence, it can be really long-lasting. If a child is at school and they're in a drawing class and they draw a picture of a dog, the teacher goes, "What's that?" "Well, that doesn't look like a dog." That child is probably going to receive the suggestion that they can't draw. And that could go on for the rest of that person's life. If somebody's in a position of authority, that's when their suggestions become very powerful.
Hello and welcome back to Athena Women Today and my journey of self-discovery to understand what it takes to be a confident woman in today's society. And I shine a light on diverse and successful women who are sharing their stories of confidence, resilience, and growth. And I have a conversation with Helen Davis, clinical hypnotherapist and functional movement teacher. And together, we dispel the myths around hypnotherapy and how a power of suggestion has helped thousands of women to reclaim their confidence and their self-worth. So I'm delighted to welcome Helen to my couch.
Hi, Maria. It's wonderful to be here.
Oh, thanks, Helen. And I'm so excited about this interview because I'd like to understand more about hypnotherapy and how you've helped women to reclaim their confidence. So shall we dive straight into the first question?
Let's do it.
Ready to go? So Helen, was there a personal turning point where you realized the power of the subconscious mind?
It's an interesting question. I think for me, it was more a gradual process because I became a hypnotherapist because being a hypnotherapist's client changed my life. And when I worked with a hypnotherapist, it was because I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. And that's what brings most people to hypnotherapy. It's usually the last resort. So for me, I've been through a period of illness, which had brought my first career to an end.
And you were a business analyst.
I was. I spent 20 years as a business analyst in the corporate world. I was successful at what I did, but I knew in my heart it wasn't where my heart wanted to be.
Yeah.
I had no idea what else I could do or what I wanted to do. And the universe, whatever, changed everything for me. My body had been giving me signals for a long time that things weren't well. I had chronic migraines. I used to get regular throat infections. And I was also going through I was very tearful. With hindsight, I was actually going through perimenopause, but this is back in
we didn't know much about it.
2012. Yeah. We didn't know about it. It wasn't publicly talked about in those days. And I was relatively young. I was in my early to mid 40s at the time. So wasn't aware that's what was happening. And then eventually I got a flu-like virus, which I couldn't shake off, and everything just ground to a halt. I ended up not working for 18 months.
Wow.
At all. It then took 2.5 years to build up to a kind of half-time version of a job.
Gosh.
Not my old job, but a job within that industry. And the things that helped me to heal and recover were hypnotherapy and slow mindful yoga.
Wow.
And during that period, I ended up retraining in both those things because I finally had worked out what I wanted to do when I grew up.
I'm sure so many ladies can resonate with that story. Successful career, I guess feeling that there was something missing, feeling lost, and then actually something happening in your life. In your case, it was getting an illness. With some other women, it could be a relationship breakdown or trying for children. And that took a knock-on effect, a pivot for you. But how did you seek hypnotherapy as the answer?
As I say, I was open to anything at that point.
Right.
And somebody who I trusted said, "I know a fantastic hypnotherapist. I think working with her would really help you." So what did I have to lose?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went and worked with her, and she was brilliant. She is brilliant. She is still a friend and a mentor today. And working with her very slowly, very gently. And there's many different ways. And I see this working with my own clients. Some people can come in, they can do 4 sessions, they've got what they came for, they get on with their lives. Other people I might work with for months or even a couple of years intermittently to help them make all the changes they're wanting to make. And that's what happened with me. I kept working with her, not because it wasn't working, but because it absolutely was working. And I was responding to the work that we were doing. And I was seeing changes and changes in the way I saw the world, starting to get to the root of why I had this desperate need to get everything right, to be perfect. Those people-pleasing tendencies. I didn't even know that's what they were called before that. All of these things started to make sense. And as I started to peel back the layers of the onion with her help, it became more and more fascinating. And it was relatively early on that this idea started to take root. Maybe this is what I've been looking for.
That is so interesting. And offline, you helped me to understand the different types of therapy that were out there. Because growing up, when somebody would say hypnotherapy, and you're smiling and nodding, because you know what I'm about to say, we'd go on a family holiday to Butlins. I'm sorry if you don't know what Butlins is in a different country. Butlins family holiday events, and you would have a guy on stage supposedly doing hypnotherapy and making that person do something. That's honestly what I thought hypnotherapy was. And how fascinating that as we've come through this to meet someone like you, Helen, who says, no, this is clinical hypnotherapy, power of suggestion can help you. Can you explain the different types of therapy and how hypnotherapy
Absolutely.
helps?
So what you're talking about is hypnosis.
Right.
Hypnosis, which I do as well.
Okay.
Hypnosis is taking somebody or guiding someone into a deep state of relaxation, which is what we call trance.
Okay.
When somebody is in that state of relaxation, that state of hypnosis can be used in many ways. It can absolutely be used, as you described, for entertainment.
Right.
That same state can be used therapeutically, which is where we get hypnotherapy.
Okay.
If you're working on stage, if somebody's doing this purely for entertainment, the thing that's important to understand is that those people on stage have chosen to go up there. No one goes on stage for a hypnotist show without knowing they're going to do something that makes them look silly.
Right.
So that's part of the entertainment. They are actively getting involved. The hypnotist on stage does not want anyone on his stage, and it's usually a man, the stage ones, who isn't wanting to do it, because this is the thing people don't always realize. You cannot be hypnotized into doing something you don't actually, on some level, want to do.
Okay.
So hypnotic suggestions are very powerful when they fit in and align with your own deep-rooted beliefs, your inner desires, the things you want to do. Now, if you enjoy the idea of being on stage and making people laugh, then you're going to dance like a chicken or sing like Madonna, or the other way around if you prefer, because you're quite happy to do that. If you're sitting in the hypnotherapist's chair and you've come in to lose weight, to stop smoking, to get rid of the phobia you've had about going to the dentist, to help with a chronic health condition, whatever it is, something that is really deep in you that you want to change, then hypnotherapy can help you achieve that.
That's really interesting. Power of suggestion. That's what we're talking about here. And offline, it was fantastic because you gave me 2 examples of what power of suggestion actually was. Are you happy to share again what that was?
Of course. So we're receiving suggestions all the time. Advertising is suggestion. So we're always responding to suggestions, but it's particularly powerful when we're young. So that when we're born into the world, we come in not quite a blank slate, but pretty close to it. And we get programming, particularly up until we're about 7 or 8 years old. And the programming that is most powerful is coming from people that we respect or look up to. Now, that might be parents, it might be teachers, it might be older siblings. And this is where the whole thing about, when children have a bad influence, it can be really long lasting. If a child is at school and let's say they're in a a drawing class and they draw a picture of a dog, if the teacher goes, "What's that?" "Well, that doesn't look like a dog," that child is probably going to receive the suggestion that they can't draw.
Yeah.
And that could go on for the rest of that person's life, that they believe they can't draw. Same if they're singing or writing, or, with children who are dyslexic, who are told they're stupid. These are suggestions that we absorb, and then they become part of the programming. And just like a computer, we're run on the programming that we take on board throughout our lives. Hypnotherapy allows us to start understanding what caused that programming. Right. And when we understand it, we have some clarity, there's the potential to then move beyond it, release it, and find more helpful patterns for the future.
And actually, another example you gave, which does tie into, if you're okay to share an example, one of your clients in a medical case.
Yeah. So position of authority, as I say, is if somebody's in a position of authority, that's when their suggestions become very powerful. And in our modern world, doctors and other medics are way up there when it comes to authority figures. So if the doctor tells you something, for many people, that just becomes fact. So there was one particular client I worked with recently who was having a knee replacement surgery. It's routine surgery these days. But the problem he had was that his blood pressure was very high. And every time he went to the doctor, which is a known thing, it got a bit higher. And so he had a pre-op consultation with his surgeon. The surgeon said to him, "The problem we've got is your blood pressure. If we can't get that down, we'll have to cancel the surgery."
Wow. Okay.
That is a very powerful suggestion. It's frustrating that so many fantastic medics don't have the training in the power of suggestion to know how you can say these things differently. Luckily, this chap's wife knew of me. He came and had a session with me, and we're talking a 79-year-old man here. So it was well outside his comfort zone.
Yeah.
And we didn't have much time, so we did one extra long session together. And at the beginning of the session, he was saying to me, all he could think about was his blood pressure. And I was trying to encourage him to think about how he would feel when the knee surgery was finished. Because, of course, the problem was the moment the doctor had said the blood pressure is the problem, his blood pressure had gone up.
Right.
Because that's the natural response. And the moment he thought, my blood pressure is a problem, his blood pressure went up. So what I had to do was find a way to get him to relax, which would naturally relax his blood pressure, and then sustain that relaxation into and beyond the surgery.
Gosh. It's actually scary, really, when you truly understand it as you're explaining it, to think about how many people are in your lives at the moment who are telling you things, and it's going in and it's actually not helping you. It's not making you grow. You feel stuck. Actually pretty worrying.
The thing to be aware of is that we don't always absorb every suggestion.
Okay.
They have to kind of connect with what's going on for us. So if somebody believes, so let's stick with this particular client, he believed that his blood pressure was going to potentially cause the surgeon to cancel the operation. So he was constantly coming back to that. Anxiety, of course, increases blood pressure and tension. So that was a self-perpetuating thing. Anyone he met who reinforced that idea that this was a problem would contribute to that. So my job was to diffuse the situation, get him to step back from it. And the way I did that was by getting him to focus on how he would feel after the surgery. Because in order to get to after the surgery had to have happened. And in order for the surgery to have happened, the blood pressure wasn't an issue.
Wow.
Initially, when I said, I asked him to think about what was he looking forward to after the surgery, he found it really hard. Every time I asked him, he'd just come back to, but the blood pressure's my problem. But with, gentle conversation and chatting, putting him to his ease, just as you did with me before we started recording here, I got him to start telling me about the sports that he used to do, and that he loved his bowling, and he enjoyed going for walks with the family, and was looking forward to not being left behind because his knee was hurting. And then I use all of that, plus all of the suggestions that I know are important, weave them into a recording for him, which I then talk him through while he's in deep relaxation. And those suggestions are going in because by that point, his subconscious has learned to trust that he can trust me. It's open to this. It understands it's going to be helpful. And those suggestions are going in. And the proof in this case, well, there were two proofs. One was at the end of his relaxation session in our work together, when I said to him, and I intentionally changed the phrasing of the question this time. And I said, how do you feel now when you think about the surgery? To which his answer was, I'm just really looking forward to all the things I can do afterwards.
Oh my goodness.
And so, and it was unusual for that to happen in one session. Normally, even for surgery, I'd be working with people for a couple of sessions. Normally, I work with people for about 4 sessions to start with, and sometimes that's all they need. But that turnaround was so quick because he was so ready for it. He was ready. He needed it. We didn't have a lot of time. And I followed up with him. The surgery did go ahead. It did go well. And he said it absolutely was down to the work that he'd done with me.
Gosh, well done. And that's also, you on your website, you are a medical clinical hypnotherapist.
I'm going to slightly correct you. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist who specializes in medical hypnosis.
Right,
I'm not medically trained, and it's really important that I'm clear about that.
Okay.
I'm not a medical professional, but unlike many hypnotherapists, my training, both during my initial training and many of the continuous professional development I've done since, I've done a lot of focusing on working with people with medical conditions.
Yes.
We all know these days that pretty much any medical condition is exacerbated by stress. One of the things that everybody tends to understand about hypnotherapy is that it helps relax you, which is you can't be stressed and relaxed at the same time. So even by getting people to find their own way of taking themselves into relaxation, that can reduce those symptoms. So whether that's high blood pressure, like this chap was saying, whether it's somebody who has IBS, which we know is exacerbated by stress, or any other health condition, chronic health condition, reducing stress in itself can help reduce the symptoms. Something like asthma. I was out for a walk with a friend once, and she uses an asthma inhaler. And we were up the top of a hill, and she suddenly started feeling wheezy. So she went into her pocket, and her face just fell at this look of fear, and she realized her inhaler was in the car.
Gosh.
At that point, she wasn't having an asthma attack. She just felt a little wheezy. Her thought pattern, her own power of suggestion, was starting off down the, I don't have my inhaler, I'm going to have an asthma attack, I might die. Right. That was where she was going. And so I was able to stop her, and I said, look me in the eye. And what I did in that case, we know I didn't have a nice comfortable chair for her to go into slow relaxation. I used something we call waking hypnosis. She needed an authority figure at that point. I stepped up. I told her what was happening, what she needed to do, and her subconscious just latched on and listened. And what I did was I got her to put her hand back in her pocket, imagine the feel of the inhaler, bring that imaginary inhaler to her mouth or to her nose, do what she would normally do. You can tell I'm not a user of one myself, so it's her mouth, isn't it? Bring it to her mouth, feel it on her lips, feel the breath, feel it going down into her lungs, feel her breathing slow. Job done.
Wow, that's incredible.
And this is not somebody who'd ever been a client of mine. It was someone who's quite skeptical about these things. But in that moment, she needed someone to tell her she was safe.
Wow.
And so she did. And her body responded in the same way it would have done if she'd had the inhaler.
That's incredible, Helen. Do you mind if I ask whether you can share another story of a client that you've helped with a medical condition?
I think one of the most interesting is a client who came to me with a very personal condition because she had what's called an anal fissure, which is a wound inside the anus. And it's something that people don't talk about. And actually, she's always said to me, obviously I'm sharing her story completely anonymously, but she did always say, when you tell this story, please tell people what I had, because people need to know that this is a thing. Because
I've never heard of it.
Exactly.
No.
Most people haven't unless they've experienced it. But it is, you can imagine, it's profoundly, excruciatingly painful.
Yeah.
And normally they heal within a few weeks. When she came to me, she'd had it for 6 months. when her body had gone into a cycle of inflammation. The doctors had said, we can treat this surgically, but we can't do that until the inflammation's come down. And she couldn't get out of the inflammation. So she was living on painkillers. She could barely stand for any length of time. So she was holding her job down, but it was tough. Now, she came to me because she had already made the connection that she believed that there was some kind of an emotional issue preventing her body from healing. Now, this is a huge part of the work I do. We all have emotional issues that manifest as health conditions. How they manifest depends on our own physiology, our own pathology, what's going on for us. So when people talk about an illness being psychosomatic, it doesn't mean it's all in the head. It means what happens in your mind is reflected in your body. So the pain is real, no question. But if we can get to the root of the emotional issues that are causing the body to go into tension or stress or whatever it's doing, that will help reduce the symptoms. So some people, when they're in chronic stress, will get migraines. That's what happens for me. Some people will find their back goes out. Some people will get a flare-up of IBS. This particular lady was having this issue with the inner fissure. But when we can understand what's going on for them emotionally, it can have a knock-on effect and help with the physical symptoms.
That's what's so difficult with chronic pain. That's what drew me to you, is helping people with chronic pain. Because when there's something going wrong in your body, like fibromyalgia, and it can have a knock-on effect in other areas of your body, and actually you end up with something else because of the first thing, and then something else might be failing in the body, but then how that can affect your mind. And when you said it's sometimes a lot of it is in the mind.
Again, I'm not correcting you, but just for clarity for everyone who's watching this, it's not that the pain is in your mind. It's that what's happening in your mind is the reason the pain is causing the pain.
Yes.
So the pain is real.
Yes.
So there's two different things, or two different angles to this. So if I go back to this lady I was talking about, the work we did in 4 sessions, the first, she actually carried on working with me afterwards because she found it so transformative, and she wanted to, just as I did when I was a client, to extend this to other areas of her life. But those first 4 sessions got her from being almost on permanent painkillers to the point where her inflammation was reduced sufficiently that the doctors were able to do the surgery, and she was able to fully heal from that condition. What's fascinating about the work I did with her is we weren't working on her physical symptoms. I threw in a few suggestions about your body is calm and comfortable and cool and everything works properly and so on. But the work we did was on helping her release the pain of a former relationship that she knew she had never processed.
Wow.
And that was what she was caught up with emotionally. And it was causing her so much stress that it manifested in a physical symptom.
Wow.
So that's one side of it. You've then got something like the gentleman I spoke about with the high blood pressure, where there is a specific thing related to a specific event coming up, surgery. We do the work together to get them through that. When we talk about chronic pain, there is another issue as well. So back pain is the classic. I've worked with somebody recently who has persistent back pain. He's had surgery. The doctors have said, we've done everything. The surgery has worked. We can see, look, on the x-ray, this was like this, it's now like that. And yet he still has back pain. So what's going on? That can often be that the neural pathways in the brain have kind of got stuck, because pain is not, when we feel pain, we don't feel pain from the part of the body that is hurting. If you sprain your ankle, pain has a really valuable job to do. It's saying, do not put weight on this foot until this is healed. So the message that this foot is damaged goes to the brain. The brain sends out its signals to say, every time this person puts their weight on it, make it hurt so they don't put their weight on it. It's practical. When we get into chronic pain, and somebody's been through all the medical tests, had all the explorations, maybe had surgery, and the doctors say there is no apparent reason for this, it can be because the brain has got stuck into a path of this feeling, this sensation coming from this part of the body being normal. And that's when working with suggestion, working more deeply with some more analytical hypnotherapy to find out what's going on underneath. Maybe somebody's been triggered, or this situation is reminded them of something happened when they were a child that's got them stuck in a particular pattern. All of these things, and my job is to work out which of these solutions is going to be the one that's going to be most effective. Any of these things can help release that pattern, reframe the need for the pain, and reduce it or let it go. Plus, on a very practical level, as I said before, hypnosis, the state of hypnosis is a state of deep relaxation, which releases and reduces stress and reminds the body that it's possible to not feel that discomfort.
Gosh, it just sounds incredible. And for those listening out there who are really leaning into this, all of Helen's socials are in the YouTube description. Please reach out, ask some questions, especially if you're struggling. Helen's there to help guide you with this.
Absolutely. And if someone feels that working with me one-to-one might be something that would be useful for them, I always offer a free, no strings conversation, usually over Zoom.
Brilliant.
To get to know each other, because my job is to find out whether I'm the right person to help them, whether I know someone else who might be better, whether this is the right thing for them at that point. So that's never a hard sell. It's absolutely an opportunity for someone just to find out if this might be their next best step.
I feel like already in this conversation, we've moved way on from Butlins, and I'm really understanding this, and the power of it is incredible. So, well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for explaining that. Helen, you also are a functional movement teacher.
Yeah.
And I would really like to talk about this because this is equally as important and there's crossovers with it. Are you happy to explain what that is?
I would love to. So functional movement is about using our bodies the way they were designed to be moved. It's about finding the natural flow in how we move. I initially trained as a yoga teacher in a very slow, mindful form of yoga called Scaravelli-inspired yoga, which people tend not to have heard of unless they have heard of it, if you know what I mean. I then went on to train in something called Bones for Life, which is specifically based in functional movement. It's a type of movement that is very different from a workout. It's very different from yoga as well. We're not looking to create postures. We're doing we call them processes, little movement exercises that are actually more about training. Again, it comes back to the brain and the neural pathways. It's more about training the brain to make get everything flowing and moving the way it did when we were born or when we were small children, rather than muscle training, for example. Right. So, for example, one of the things I teach people is a really beautiful way of getting up from the floor. If you're sitting on the floor, most of us find it, particularly as we get a bit older, it's not particularly elegant when we're getting up from the floor. But this process brings in a spiral. And if you watch like a toddler getting up from the floor, a lot of them, some of them will just go hands and feet down, bum in the air. Yeah. But a lot of them will do this sort of spiraling movement. And when you learn to do that, which I can teach people in 10 minutes, well, suddenly you can get up from the floor in a way that actually feels elegant, it's comfortable, and it's actually protecting the hips and the knees because you're keeping everything aligned. And alignment is absolutely key to this. So when people start learning Bones for Life processes, one of the first things they notice is that their walking changes. They start noticing that maybe they walk with their chin jutted out, but they've learned how to align and lengthen the spine. Everyone sits up when I say this. It's become a standing joke in networking meetings and things. When I stand up to do my introduction now, everyone who knows me immediately sits up. But we've all been told all our lives since we were at school, sitting at a family dinner table, whatever, sit up properly.
Yes.
And we tend to pull up from our shoulders and it's terribly uncomfortable. But when you learn how to support your spine from underneath so that the spine is all stacked, all the vertebrae are stacked on top of each other. And when you're standing, your heels, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your head are all stacked, it becomes effortless.
Okay, so how do you feel about the fact that I absolutely love wearing my stiletto heels? Because I'm sure that's probably not good for posture and alignment, is it?
It's your, it's your choice. I have no issue with you choosing to do that. What it is doing, however, is by lifting your heel, it's pushing your pelvis forward, which means that you're having to struggle to keep your shoulders back. So to keep your shoulders, and this is why so many women can't walk in heels. I mean, you absolutely can, but many, many women, and I was one of them when I don't wear heels anymore, but I was never any good at walking in them because you are being pushed forward and then you're pulling back. So the reason heels often make the lumbar spine hurt, wearing them for protracted periods of time, is that your pelvis is pushed forward. So then you've got to pull your shoulders back. And so you're putting an arch in the spine that is deeper than would be if your heels are on the floor. You know, I have to be honest, and you already know this, Maria, these days I spend my life either barefoot or in barefoot shoes. In fact, I'm gradually selling off all my pretty shoes because I just can't wear them anymore. But that's my choice. I'm not going to tell anyone else what they should do.
And I've gone the other way, haven't I? Because I'm a stiletto heel dancer.
Yeah, I can't even get my head around that.
I've definitely got stronger in my body through it. So obviously, yes, I can dance, I can move in stiletto heels. Helen, should we rewind back the clock and talk about, you know what question I'm about to ask you, why you really got into functional movement? What was the pivotal moment for you?
Pivotal is a good word. If you remember, my first massive career pivot came through a huge health crisis.
Yeah.
That was back in 2012. 10 years, almost to the month later, I thought I got it sorted. I was working as a hypnotherapist. I was teaching yoga. I knew what I was doing with my life. And then one Sunday evening at home, I was rushing to go from one room, from my kitchen into my conservatory, actually, at home. And I was wearing a big, little sloppy pair of trousers, Sunday evening at home. And I was walking too fast. And I trod on the other leg of my trousers. And it's really funny, when I say that to women, there's always a nod of recognition and, oh my God, I've done that so often. If I say that to men, they all go, you did what?
No, because I put my stiletto into all sorts of things.
But it's like men's clothes, they're so much more practical. Anyway, basically, I was moving fast and I tied my feet together as I was doing so. And so I crashed to the floor, threw my arms out in front of me, as we do to protect our face instinctively. And I can't tell you, the pain was excruciating. And to cut a long story short, it turned out that I'd broken both my wrists.
Wow.
Yeah, again, everything I do, I don't even see my business. I mean, my business is called One Step Forward because everything I do on both sides is about helping people do that. And in this context, the first thing I did when I'd hit the ground and realized that I had a big problem, I was going to say on my hands, but you know what I mean, was to call in all my hypnotherapy skills. I was able to, coming back to the idea of pain, I was able to literally numb my hands with the power of my own mind because there were things I had to do. I was at home, I lived alone, so I had a dog. So there were practical things I had to do to get an ambulance, think about who was going to look after the dog when I got carted off to hospital. So that was useful to have those skills. As I say, it turned out I had 2 broken wrists. I was put in plaster for 2 weeks. I had surgery the next day. So I have metal implants in each wrist. Because I had surgery, I was only in cast for 2 weeks. And then after that, I was able to go to just splints because obviously the metal holds everything in place. Those 2 weeks I stayed with my parents, who were amazing and stepped up, just as they had done when I had got ill 10 years previously. But after 2 weeks, I said, right, I'm going home. So I moved back home on my own with the dog, with cast, with a very limited amount of weight that I could carry in my hands. My friends were amazing. And I thought that was the worst thing that was going to happen to me that year. Because I was 56 at the time, because I was a woman in my 50s, I'd broken a bone. I was referred for a DEXA scan, which is a bone density scan. I thought it was a formality. I even postponed it a couple of times because it just wasn't convenient to get down to the hospital. However, a month or so after the scan, I had a phone call to tell me that the results showed that my bones were in the region of osteoporosis.
Gosh.
Now, there are different ranges of this. They measure the bone density, and if you're within a certain level, they describe it as osteopenia, which is effectively a kind of warning that they're not great. Beyond that, they say it's osteoporosis. I was in the beyond that category. I mean, it's not as extreme as it could be, but certainly for someone of my age, it was a shock, a serious diagnosis. Utterly devastating. As far as I was concerned, I was fitter and healthier than I'd ever been in my life. I was a yoga teacher.
And a clinical hypnotherapist.
But the point, from the physical point of view, it's like, well, I teach yoga. How can I possibly teach yoga if my bones are crumbling? So after, and you know, going back to the fact that I spent 20 years as a business analyst, when I'm up against the wall, I go into research mode. And I think over the next month, once I stopped crying, which took a while, I spent every waking hour researching. I read, I think, 6 books in the next month. I was listening to podcasts. I was watching videos. I was going into Facebook groups, which is pretty scary. I always warn people to remember that the people who are active in Facebook groups about health are the ones who have not managed to get on with life and get back out there and enjoy life. And along the way, I came across this program literally called Bones for Life.
For Life. That's how it came about.
And when I explored it, I discovered that its roots were in exactly the same approach to movement that I'd been working with for years. And I signed up with an organization in America because that's the only people I could find who were doing the training. In my first lesson, I knew I need to be doing this, I need to be teaching it. And then I found somebody in the UK who's training teachers, the only person in the UK who's training teachers.
Gosh.
There are currently only a few dozen people teaching this program in the UK.
That's incredible to hear, though. What an interesting statistic.
It's hardly known about. It was a 2-year teacher training course. I found out about it in October. The next 2-year course started in January, and I managed to get on it. So I'm now fully certified to teach that. And I wanted to create something that made it easy for people who aren't local to me to learn more about this program, because, as I said, I couldn't find anywhere to learn it. Not without paying a fortune to do a really intensive course, which was, okay, I was able to prioritize doing that. But for other people, they need something that they can fit in, like they're used to doing their yoga class or their Pilates class. So I created an online course, which is an introduction. It's not the whole thing, but it gives people a real taster and some really practical little movements that they can take out into their daily life.
And as a reminder, this is about creating a better quality of life.
Absolutely.
And it's not just for people with an osteoporosis diagnosis. It's people who love wearing, or ladies who love wearing stilettos and don't want to part from that. It's anybody who needs to improve their posture, or they've got pains.
So posture is absolutely the key here, because the program is about, and I'm talking the whole program as well as the way I teach it, it's about understanding the conditions our bones need to be strong. And it's just as importantly about posture, because the way our bones get strong is by sending gravitational force through the body. So every time our heel strikes the ground, that gravitational force ripples up through the body. And whatever shape our body is holding at that point, that force is confirming it. So that's why if you walk with flat heels or barefoot shoes or completely barefoot, and you improve your posture, then you're doing everything you can to get that posture better and better. If you are wearing heels, you're still sending that gravitational force through the body. You've got that slightly out of alignment posture, and it is a fact that you're confirming that. So you then need to do other things in other ways to counter that. Posture is so important as well, because the human head weighs on average 10 kilos, 4.5 pounds. So if your posture, as so many of us, with or without heels, so many of us carry our heads a bit forward from our spine. If we then trip over something and we're already forward weighted, it's way harder to get back up and not crash down to the ground.
Is that why so many elderly fall over?
You're not being ageist at all. It's actually a fact that people over 65, at least 1 in 3 of them is likely to fall in any given year. And when you get over 80, that figure's over 50%, or around 50%. Now, obviously, not all those falls are going to result in broken bones, but it is a fact that if you don't fall over, your chances of breaking a bone are an awful lot smaller. So learning to avoid falling it's actually a huge, the NHS is all over learning to avoid falling. Unfortunately, they don't know about Bones for Life. And there are many other schemes that help people to avoid falling. And this also ties back into this central theme of confidence, because posture is fundamental to confidence.
Helen, is there any example that you can show us of aligning your posture, or a little exercise you do?
Okay, well, I'm going to show you something first of all, which isn't even a Bones for Life process, but it's a really good way of understanding the impact that posture can have on every aspect, including and particularly on our confidence. So I'm going to invite you and everybody watching at home just to flop, basically. Let everything round your spine, go the complete opposite of good posture, and just notice how that feels. What does that do to your sense of confidence? Does it make you feel strong? Does it make you feel weak? Does it make you feel happy? What's going on when you just let everything slump?
I think quite small.
Yeah.
It's like I'm being weighed down, hidden, unseen.
All of which are perfect opposites to confidence. So the best way to do this is just to let your feet connect to the ground wherever you are, so that you feel your feet connect to the ground. If you're sitting, you feel the sitting bones connecting in, and then that lifts up through your spine. And you can allow your chest to just open and broaden. Your head rests on your spine. You're looking straight out at the horizon. What does that do to your sense of confidence?
It's much better. Feels so much better. Yeah, because you're looking up.
And that's simply doing it without teaching anything in particular. Do you know Amy Cuddy's work, power posing? So you come across that?
I know.
So I think you'd love it. Amy Cuddy, TED Talk on power posing. And she takes this a stage further, and she gets women to stand in a Wonder Woman pose, and you can. There's a lot of advice saying if you've got an interview or a big meeting at work, go into you might need the disabled toilets rather than the normal ones, but go in somewhere you can get away from people and power pose for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
And it will absolutely lift your confidence.
I find that if I've got music on, I always have music playing, and especially when I'm doing the shopping or walking down the high street or doing the school run. And it's when I'm walking, I find that my posture is always quite up, and I'm walking confidently to the music. But I guess it's the same thing, isn't it?
Anything that gives you confidence gives you that lift. And again, with the dancing you do and everything, you are used to thinking about your posture, but most people aren't. And as we get older, that tendency to slump gets bigger. And if we bring it back to this idea of falling, or rather not falling, if your shoulders start to round, the head is forward, we physically will find that our feet don't get picked up as much when we're talking and when we're walking. And that's when we're likely to trip. And if we trip over something and we're already forward weighted, as I said, we're more likely to fall. So when we've got that lift, that more upright posture, we literally find that our feet pick up better. We're less likely to fall over obstacles. And if we do, we're already more upright, and it's easier to stay upright. Because the fact is, as people get older, the effect of those falls can be much, much more severe. And if someone breaks a hip, it can be absolutely life-changing. It's terrifying how many older people who are fit and healthy then break a hip. And looking back, people say, well, that was the beginning of the end. They never quite got back to their full mobility. It can absolutely be life-changing. And so learning from an earlier age how to improve our posture, move more fluidly, not trip over things is invaluable. And there is another really important piece of this, particularly for women. So low bone density is an issue particularly for women. During that perimenopause, it's another perimenopause thing. During that period of perimenopause, when our estrogen levels plummet, the natural process that we are all going through from our mid-30s onwards of bones becoming less dense. That process is exacerbated and accelerated by the decline in estrogen. If I had been told what I now know about bone health when I was going through perimenopause, I might have been able to do some things that would have prevented me ending up getting the diagnosis I did 15 years later.
That's a very powerful statement.
And it's absolutely true, because some of the changes I have made since getting that diagnosis, I don't know, but if I'd made them 15 years ago, it might have changed things. And so as well as talking to people who have already been diagnosed with osteoporosis or told they're at risk, I really want to get this message out to younger women, because we need to be learning these techniques now, because if you learn how to improve your posture, and the amazing thing about Bones for Life is I can teach someone in 5 minutes a little trick that they will take away and remember that will help them improve and lengthen their posture and their spine. And then I can teach them in another 5 minutes something that'll help to retain that nice length. And if they do that 2 or 3 times a day, and we're talking about a little process that can take 2 or 3 minutes each time, do it while they're waiting for the kettle to boil. Do that 2 or 3 times a day, it will change your posture. It will improve your posture. It will improve your ability to stay upright, and it will help you to move in a way that is more fluid, more easy. And all of that is absolutely fundamental to that sense of confidence and owning your space in the world.
Gosh, Helen, what an incredible story of confidence and self-worth, coming from being a business analyst and then being hit by illness, pivoting, going into being a clinical hypnotherapist, and yoga, and years later having that fall, and then learning about your diagnosis of osteoporosis, learning more about Bones for Life and posture, how complementary, and you're really living your truest life now and helping so many women and men with chronic pain, but also with posture, and it's preventative treatment ultimately, isn't it?
Absolutely. It preventative is always more effective. And learning these techniques just helps people to have another string to their bow. So if somebody loves yoga or loves Pilates or weights, I mean, we all know these days that lifting weights is the best thing you can do for your bones. Some people want to do it. Some people just don't want to go near a gym, and that's fine. But if you do anything else, improving your posture will help. If you're a runner, improving your posture will help. So this is what I love about Bones for Life. I don't see it as a be all and end all. It's something that everybody can benefit from alongside what else they choose to do. And for people who, for whatever reason, feel that there is nothing else that has worked for them or that they want to do, it is something that they can do on its own, because it's absolutely, doing this is better than not doing anything at all. And it will have definite results in their ability to move more easily, more comfortably, and with more confidence.
So even through hypnotherapy and body posture, Bones for Life, it does seem to come back to confidence. That is the end result. And actually self-worth underneath that, really, isn't it?
This is the thing, isn't it, Maria, that at the end of the day, confidence is an inside job.
That's right.
It's not something we spend so many years looking for confidence from outside, but ultimately it comes from inside. And whether that's through finding the physical ability to stand up, take up the space that you're entitled to, be present in the room, whether it's from the emotional ability to come to terms with the things we've all been through, to understand what makes you tick yourself, and to own who you are and decide where you want to go forward. At the end of the day, it's all stuff that we have to do for ourselves, but that doesn't mean we have to do it on our own.
Oh, what a fantastic thought, Helen. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure so many ladies and men watching this will really resonate with that. I've just got one more question to ask you, if I may.
Of course.
Helen, what's one thing you wish every woman understood about the power of her mind and body?
The key thing, the most important thing, is that they're one and the same thing. There is no separation between mind and body. Everything I do is about that mind-body connection. We talked earlier on about how our thoughts can manifest as physical symptoms, and that's what psychosomatic means. They are real symptoms, but they are, if sometimes created by, if not, and then definitely exacerbated by what we think and feel and believe. And then we looked at how changing our physical posture can affect how we feel emotionally. So there's just two little things that literally prove that mind and body are totally interconnected. And if you look back at all the ancient healing systems, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, shamanic healing, all of these ancient systems of healing, they don't separate out mind and body. That's just something we've started doing over the last 200 or 300 years with Western medicine. Interestingly, many medics nowadays are becoming more and more open to this. And this is why we're seeing the growth of complementary therapies, including hypnotherapy, to support people. I mean, don't get me wrong, modern medicine is fantastic. It can do amazing things. And when it's supported by other approaches that work holistically with the whole system, that's when people really get the lasting long-term results. So what I say to anyone watching is whatever you've got going on in your life, whether you feel the root of it is physical, mental, emotional, at the end of the day, it's all of those things. And it almost doesn't matter where you start, but whatever you do is going to help you take that next step forward to find your own healing. And what I always say to people is that the work I do, whether I'm working with people on the mat, in the hypnotherapy chair, it's all about helping people to become an active participant in their own healing.
And taking back control.
Finding confidence in themselves to create the life that they want to live.
What a wonderful way to end this insightful podcast. I've learned so much. Moving on from thinking about butlins and the hypnotherapy or hypnosis on stage. Stage hypnosis. But also as a woman entering the perimenopausal years and posture, and what you had, the powerful statement that you said about if you had known then what you know now, perhaps you could have changed things for yourself. I really take that on board. I hope everybody else does. That was really insightful. Thank you so much for coming on today. And thank you guys for listening, for watching. Please subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.